cargo ship Aurora's Dream docked at Kepler Station with a soft thud that Jake Morrison felt through the metal deck plates. He stretched his back and looked out the viewport at the massive trading station. Hundreds of ships from dozens of different worlds were docked here. Some he recognized. Others looked completely alien to his human eyes. Jake had been coming to Kepler Station for 3 years now, ever since Earth started serious trade with the galaxy. The station sat right on the edge of what most species called civilized space. It was the kind of place where you could buy almost anything if you had enough credits and ask the right questions. Jake preferred not to ask too many questions. He walked through the ship checking systems before heading out. The Aurora's Dream was not much to look at, but she was reliable. Jake had bought her with his savings after leaving the Earth's military. Trading between human colonies and alien worlds paid well enough to keep him fed and his ship running. His crew was small. Carlos Rivera ran the engines and could fix almost anything that broke. Linda Hayes handled communications and navigation. Both had been with Jake since he bought the ship. They trusted each other, which was important when you were light years from Earth. Jake stepped off his ship onto the station's main docking level. The air recycling systems worked hard to filter out the mix of atmospheres that different species needed to breathe. The smell was still strange, part metal, part ozone, and part something organic he could never identify. Aliens of every size and shape moved through the wide corridors. The tall, thin Altarians with their blue skin and forearms carried data tablets and spoke in high, musical voices. Short, stocky Corvin with their rock-like skin pushed cargo containers on repulsor platforms. Jake had learned to identify most of the common species, but new ones showed up all the time. He made his way to the supply depot to order food and spare parts. The station's artificial gravity was set a bit light for human comfort, making each step feel slightly bouncy. Most species seemed to prefer lower gravity than Earth normal after placing his orders. Jake decided to grab a meal at one of the station's restaurants. He avoided the ones that specialized in live food or meals that glowed in the dark. There was a small place called the Neutral Zone that served food safe for most carbon-based species. The restaurant was busy with the usual mix of traders, ship crews, and station workers. Jake found a table near the back and ordered something that looked like grilled meat with vegetables. The taste was decent, though he could never be sure what animal it came from. He was halfway through his meal when he noticed the commotion near the restaurant's entrance. A group of Corvin were laughing and pointing at something on the floor. Other aliens had gathered to watch, but none seemed willing to help with whatever was happening. Jake stood up to get a better look. On the floor near the entrance, a figure knelt with their head pressed to the metal deck. At first, Jake thought it might be some kind of religious ritual he did not understand. Then he saw the torn clothing and realized someone was in trouble. He pushed through the crowd of watching aliens. Most moved aside when they saw him coming. Humans had a reputation for being unpredictable, especially when they thought someone was being mistreated. The kneeling figure was unlike any alien Jake had seen before. Tall and thin like the Altarians, but with skin that seemed to be made of crystal. The surface shifted color slowly, currently showing pale blue and gray patterns. Long silver hair fell forward, hiding the face. Jake knelt down next to the figure. "Hey, are you okay?" The alien looked up and Jake felt his breath catch. The face was definitely female, with features that were almost human, but more delicate. Her eyes were larger than a human's and completely silver, like mirrors. But what struck Jake most was the expression of complete despair on her face. "Please," she said in heavily accented standard, the common language used for trade. "This worthless one begs mercy from honored human." Jake glanced around. The crowd was still watching, some recording with their devices. A few Corvin made jokes he could not understand, but their tone made it clear they found the situation amusing. "What's your name?" Jake asked quietly. "This one is called Zara," she replied, still not lifting her head completely. Was once Zara of House Velen, but no longer worthy of family name. Jake had never heard of House Velen, but the way she said it suggested it had once been important. "What happened to you?" Zara's crystal skin shifted to deeper blue patterns. Family spoke against the Hegemony Alliance. Government took all possessions, removed citizenship. This one was sold to pay family debts. The words hit Jake like a cold. Shock. Sold. He looked at the watching crowd again and realized what he was seeing. This was not just someone in trouble. This was someone who had been treated like property. Who sold you? Jake asked. Caliph Trader Grix, Zara said. This one became sick, could not work properly. Grix left this one here as worthless burden. Her skin pattern shifted to include darker gray streaks. Without master, this one has no right to food or shelter. Will die soon. Jake felt sick. He had heard rumors about species that still practice slavery. But Earth's government tried to keep humans away from those parts of the galaxy. Apparently, they had not been completely successful. Look at me, Jake said gently. Zara raised her head again. Her silver eyes were wet with tears that looked like liquid crystal. I'm Jake Morrison, captain of the Aurora's Dream. You said you're looking for someone to help you? This one begs honored captain to accept worthless servant, Zara said quickly. Will work without rest, without complaint. Only asks for small food, small space to sleep. This one knows many languages, can repair complex systems, has knowledge of 17 different star systems. Jake stared at her. She was literally begging him to let her be his slave. Every human instinct he had rebelled against the idea. Earth had fought wars to end slavery centuries ago. The thought of owning another person made him feel sick, but looking at Zara, Jake could see she was desperate. Her crystal skin showed colors he was starting to understand meant fear and hunger. If he said no, what would happen to her? Please, Zara continued. This one will be grateful servant until death. Has nowhere else to go. The crowd around them was getting larger. Jake noticed several species recording everything with their devices. Some looked amused, others bored. A few seemed genuinely interested in what the human would do. Jake made a decision that would change both their lives. Okay, he said quietly. Come with me. Zara's skin patterns shifted instantly to brighter colors. She pressed her forehead to the floor again. This one, thanks, merciful master. Will serve faithfully. Don't call me master, Jake said, helping her stand. And don't bow like that. We'll figure out the details later. The crowd began to disperse as the show ended. Jake noticed a few aliens making notes on their devices. Word would spread quickly that a human had acquired an alien servant. He was not sure what that might mean for either of them. Zara followed him through the station corridors, staying exactly 3 steps behind as they walked. Jake tried to get her to walk beside him, but she seemed genuinely confused by the suggestion. Her skin showed nervous yellow patterns whenever he spoke to her directly. When they reached the Aurora's Dream, Carlos and Linda were waiting at the airlock. They took one look at Zara and then stared at Jake with expressions he knew well. It was the same look they gave him whenever he made decisions they thought were completely crazy. Jake, Linda said carefully. What exactly did you do? Jake looked back at Zara, who had dropped to her knees again the moment they stopped walking. Her crystal skin was showing patterns he was beginning to recognize as submission and gratitude. I think, Jake said slowly, I just made everything a lot more complicated. Jake led Zara through the Aurora's Dream, while Carlos and Linda followed behind. The ship felt smaller, with 4 people aboard instead of 3. Zara kept her head down and stayed exactly 3 steps behind Jake no matter where they went. The extra cabin is here, Jake said, opening a door near the crew quarters. You can sleep here and keep your things in the storage unit. Zara looked into the room with obvious confusion. Her crystal skin shifted to pale yellow patterns. This one does not understand. Servants sleep in cargo areas or maintenance spaces. This room is for important persons. You are an important person, Jake said. This is where you'll stay. Carlos shook his head. Jake, we need to talk. Now. They left Zara standing in the corridor and went to the ship's small common area. Linda closed the door behind them and crossed her arms. What were you thinking? Linda asked. Do you know what kind of legal trouble this could cause? She was going to die, Jake said. I couldn't just leave her there, but now what? Carlos asked. Half the galaxy still thinks slavery is normal. They're going to see you as her owner, whether you want to be or not. Jake rubbed his face with his hands. He had acted on instinct back at the station, but now he was starting to understand the problems they faced. We'll figure it out. This is temporary until we can find her a better situation, Jake, Linda said more gently. I don't think you understand what you're dealing with. I ran some quick searches while you were gone. Her species is called Veilani. Their whole society is built on masters and servants. She literally doesn't know how to exist any other way. Before Jake could respond, they heard a soft sound from the corridor. Through the door window, they could see Zara on her hands and knees, scrubbing the metal floor with a piece of her torn clothing. She's cleaning the deck, Carlos said. Jake opened the door. Zara, what are you doing? This one noticed dirt on Master's ship, Zara said without looking up. Must make everything perfect for an honored crew. You don't have to do that, Jake said. We have cleaning systems. Zara stopped scrubbing and looked up at him with fear in her silver eyes. Her skin showed rapid color changes between blue and gray. This one has displeased Master? We'll try harder to be useful. No, Jake said quickly. You didn't do anything wrong. I just meant you don't have to clean the floors. Then what does Master require? Zara asked. This one knows 17 languages, can repair quantum drives, understands navigation between 47 star systems. Please tell this one how to serve? Jake looked back at Carlos and Linda, who were watching through the doorway. This was going to be more complicated than he had thought. Over the next few days, Jake learned just how deep Zara's conditioning went. She refused to eat meals with the crew, insisting that servants ate only after their masters were finished. When Jake tried to give her a portion equal to his own, she became upset and would only accept what she called appropriate servant portions. She slept on the floor next to her bed, claiming the furniture was too good for someone of her status. When Jake found her there the first morning, she explained that beds were for people with family names and citizenship. Since she had neither, the floor was proper. Zara worked constantly. She repaired systems that Jake didn't even know were broken, organized cargo with incredible efficiency, and kept the ship cleaner than it had ever been. But she did everything with the desperate intensity of someone who feared being abandoned if she showed any weakness. She's making me nervous, Carlos admitted after 3 days. Yesterday, I asked her to hand me a wrench, and she acted like I had given her the greatest honor of her life. At least she talks to you, Linda said. When I try to have a normal conversation, she just stares at the floor and asks how she can better serve the crew. Jake was having the same problems. Every attempt to treat Zara as an equal person seemed to confuse and frighten her. When he tried to pay her credits for her work, she refused to touch them. When he suggested she'd choose her own work schedule, she became so distressed that her skin turned dark blue for hours. Master must tell this one what to do, she had explained. Choice is for free persons. This one is property now. Property cannot make decisions. The word property made Jake's stomach turn every time she said it. But whenever he tried to explain that she was not property, Zara's skin would show the rapid color changes that he was learning meant panic. On the 4th day, Jake was reviewing their next cargo run when Zara approached him in the common area. She knelt beside his chair and waited until he noticed her. Yes, Jake said, trying to keep his voice gentle. This one has question for Master. If permitted to speak, you can always ask questions. Zara's skin shifted to curious yellow patterns. This one observes that human crew argues with Master. Carlos told Master that engine repairs were unnecessary. Linda disagreed with Master about navigation route, but Master did not punish them. This one is confused. Jake set down his tablet. Why would I punish them? They questioned Master's decisions. In proper society, servants who challenge masters receive correction. They're not servants, Jake said. They're my crew, my friends. We work together to make decisions. Zara stared at him with her mirror-like eyes. But Master is captain. Master has highest rank. Being captain means I'm responsible for the ship and the final decisions, Jake explained. But that doesn't mean I own Carlos and Linda. They can leave anytime they want. They can argue with me. They can even quit and find other jobs. The concept seemed to break something in Zara's mind. Her skin cycled through colors Jake had never seen before, rapid shifts between yellow, green, and silver. Free persons can leave, she asked quietly, of course. That's what freedom means. Then why do they stay? Jake thought about it. Because they want to. Because we work well together. Because we're friends? Zara was quiet for a long time. Her skin slowly settled to a soft blue pattern that Jake was starting to recognize as deep. Thought, this one does not understand friendship between ranks, she finally said. Their conversation was interrupted by an alarm from the bridge. Linda's voice came over the ship's communication system. Jake, we've got company. 3 ships just dropped out of hyperspace, and they're demanding we prepare to be boarded. Jake ran to the bridge with Zara following behind. On the main screen, he could see 3 wedge-shaped vessels that he recognized as Caliph design. They were moving into attack formation around the Aurora's Dream. They're transmitting legal documents, Linda reported. Something about recovery of stolen property. Zara made a sound like a whimper. Her skin immediately changed to the dark gray patterns that Jake had learned meant resignation and despair. They come for this one, she said quietly. The Caliph have legal claim. Master must surrender property to avoid trouble. You're not property, Jake said firmly. Yes, this one is, Zara replied. Legal documents will prove ownership. Master has been kind, but law is law. The lead Caliph ship was broadcasting on all frequencies now. The voice was harsh and mechanical, translated by the ship's computer. Human vessel, Aurora's Dream, you are harboring stolen Caliph property. Prepare for boarding and property recovery. Resistance will result in your destruction. Carlos appeared on the bridge looking grim. Jake, they're running military-grade weapons. We can't fight 3 ships. Jake looked at Zara, who had positioned herself on her knees with her hands behind her back. Apparently the proper position for property about to be transferred. Master should not risk crew for worthless servant, she said. This one thanks Master for temporary kindness. We'll remember always. Jake stared at the Caliph ships on his screen. Every practical part of his mind told him to surrender Zara and avoid a fight they could not win. Earth's government had made it clear that human traders should not interfere with alien legal systems. But looking at Zara, accepting her fate with quiet dignity, Jake felt something harden in his chest. She was not property. She was not worthless. And he was not going to let her be treated like she was. Linda. Open a channel to the Caliph ships, Jake said. Jake. Carlos warned. Think about this. I am thinking, Jake replied. That's the problem. The channel opened, and Jake faced the main screen where the Caliph commander's image appeared. The alien looked like a cross between a lizard and an insect, with multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked when it spoke. Human. You will surrender our property immediately. Jake looked at Zara one more time. Her silver eyes met his, and for just a moment, he saw not resignation, but hope. No, Jake said. I don't think I will. The Caliph commander's multiple eyes focused on Jake through the view screen. Its mandibles clicked in what Jake assumed was either amusement or irritation. Human refuses to follow galactic law, the alien asked. This will not end well for you. Let me see those legal documents, Jake said. Stalling for time while his mind raced, Linda transferred the files to Jake's station. The documents were written in standard galactic legal language, but the translation software made them readable. Everything appeared to be in order. Ownership papers, transferred documents, even medical records showing Zara's defects that made her unsuitable for continued service. The papers treated Zara exactly like a piece of broken equipment. Documents are valid, the Caliph commander said. Surrender property now, or face consequences. Jake closed the file and looked at Zara, who remained kneeling on the bridge floor. Her crystal skin had turned almost completely gray. The color he now knew meant she had given up hope. I need time to review these documents properly, Jake said to the screen. You have 1 standard hour, the commander replied. Then we will board your vessel and take what belongs to us. The channel closed. Leaving the bridge in tense silence, Jake Carlos said quietly, "We can't fight 3 warships. You know that, right?" "I know," Jake replied, but his mind was working on something else. "Linda, I need you to research everything you can about Villani culture and history. Find out how their society really works." "What are you thinking?" Linda asked. "I'm thinking that maybe we don't understand what we're dealing with here," Jake said. He looked down at Zara again. "And I'm thinking that there might be more to galactic law than what's in those documents." Linda's fingers flew over her console, accessing the ship's database and every information network she could reach. Carlos went back to the engine room to prepare for possible combat. Though they all knew it would be hopeless, Jake knelt beside Zara. "Tell me about your people," he said gently. "How did the Villani become servants to other species?" Zara looked up at him with surprise. "Master wishes to know about worthless servant race." "You're not worthless. And I want to understand." Zara's skin shifted to pale yellow. The color, Jake had learned, meant confusion mixed with something else. Maybe curiosity. "Villani evolved on worlds with dangerous predators," she began slowly. "Ancestors survived by forming packs with strict order. Strongest lead, others followed. This kept all safe." "That makes sense," Jake said. "Many species evolved that way, yes. But Villani never changed," Zara continued. "When we reached stars, pack structure became society structure. Noble families became alphas, others became servants. It was considered natural order." Jake felt pieces clicking together in his mind. "What percentage of Villani are nobles?" "Perhaps 1 in 5, Zara said. "Others serve in various levels. System worked for thousands of years." "Worked for who?" Jake asked. Zara's skin flickered with colors Jake had never seen before. This one never thought about that question," Linda called from her station. "Jake, you need to see this. I found some interesting information about galactic law and human jurisdictions." Jake went to Linda's console, leaving Zara looking thoughtful on the bridge floor. The screen showed legal documents and treaty information. "Earth never signed the Galactic Servitude Accords," Linda explained. "Our government refused, saying they violated basic sentient rights. That means humans aren't bound by those laws." "What does that mean practically?" Jake asked. "I'm not sure, but there might be a loophole here. If Zara is on a human ship, under human protection, she might have different legal status." Carlos's voice came over the intercom from the engine room. "Guys, I'm picking up more ships on long-range sensors. Looks like word is spreading about what's happening here." Jake felt the situation getting more complicated by the minute. He went back to Zara, who was still kneeling, but now had her head raised. Looking around the bridge with new attention, "Zara, have you ever seen humans interact with their own kind before?" "Only briefly at trading stations," she said. "This one observed that humans seem to argue frequently, but do not punish each other for disagreement. That's because we don't believe some people are naturally better than others," Jake explained. "We think everyone should have the chance to make their own choices about their lives." Zara's skin began cycling through colors rapidly. "But without natural order, how do humans know who should lead? How do you prevent chaos?" "We choose our leaders," Jake said. "And if they do a bad job, we choose different ones." Choose. The concept seemed to physically pain Zara. Her skin flashed with sharp red patterns. But choice requires wisdom to know what is best. Servants lack such wisdom. "That is why they are servants." "Says who?" Jake asked. The question seemed to break something in Zara's mind. She stared at Jake with her mirror eyes wide, her skin cycling through every color he had ever seen her display. "Says. Says the natural order. Says the way things have always been." "What if the way things have always been is wrong?" Before Zara could answer, Linda called out urgently. "Jake, we're getting a priority transmission from New Geneva Station. It's Dr. Patricia Wong from the Xenopsychology Research Center." The screen flickered and showed a middle-aged, human woman with kind eyes and graying hair. She was sitting in what looked like a medical office. "Captain Morrison. I've been monitoring the situation through news channels. I specialize in studying aliens who have been subjected to psychological conditioning. I believe I can help, Doctor. We're running out of time here, Jake said. I understand. Let me see the alien in question. Jake helped Zara stand and brought her in front of the screen. Dr. Wong studied her carefully, paying special attention to the color patterns on her skin. Classic conditioning symptoms, Dr. Wong said. Captain, what you're dealing with isn't just cultural programming, it's deliberate psychological modification. The Villani ruling class has spent centuries convincing their servant population that they're incapable of independent thought. Can it be reversed? Jake asked. With time and patience, yes. But not quickly, and not by simply telling her she's free. Her neural patterns have been literally rewired to prevent self-determination. Zara listened to this conversation with growing agitation. Her skin showed the rapid color changes that Jake now recognized as panic. Honored doctor speaks of things that cannot be, Zara said. This one is servant by nature, not by choice. Cannot change what one is born to be. Dr. Wong smiled gently. My dear, 300 years ago, humans believed the same thing. We thought some people were naturally meant to be slaves, and others to be masters. We fought wars over it. We nearly destroyed ourselves, but we learned that we were wrong. Humans had servants? Zara asked, her skin showing the yellow of curiosity. We did. And like your people, we told ourselves it was natural law. It took us centuries to understand that no sentient being is naturally meant to serve another. The Caliph commander's voice suddenly filled the bridge. Human vessel, your time is nearly expired. Prepare for boarding. Jake looked at the tactical display. The 3 Caliph ships were moving closer, but Linda had been right about other vessels arriving. He could see at least 6 more ships on the edge of the system. Watching and waiting, Dr. Jake said to the screen. If humans aren't bound by galactic servitude laws, what are our options? Legally, any sentient being who requests human protection can receive it, regardless of their species' laws. But Captain, you need to understand, if you do this, you'll be challenging the entire galactic social order. Jake looked at Zara, whose skin was now showing patterns he had never seen before. Swirls of silver and gold mixed with the usual colors, creating something that looked almost like hope. Zara, Jake said quietly, if you could choose your own life, what would you choose? Zara stared at him for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. This one has never been asked such a question. I'm asking now. The Caliph ships were almost in boarding range. The other vessels in the system were moving closer to watch what happened next. Jake realized that his decision wouldn't just affect Zara. It would send a message across the galaxy about what humans believed and what they were willing to fight for. Zara's skin began showing the gold and silver patterns more strongly. For the first time since Jake had met her, she straightened her shoulders and looked him directly in the eyes. If this one could choose, she said slowly, this one would choose to never kneel again. The moment Zara spoke those words, the bridge fell silent. Her skin continued showing the gold and silver patterns that Jake had never seen before. Even through the translation system, he could hear something new in her voice, a strength that hadn't been there before. Caliph ships are in boarding range, Linda reported. They're demanding immediate compliance. Jake looked at the tactical display. 3 heavily armed warships surrounded his small cargo vessel. In any normal situation, surrender would be the only logical choice. But something had changed when Zara said she didn't want to kneel anymore. Dr. Wong, Jake said to the screen. What exactly happens if I declare Zara under human protection? You would be making a legal precedent that could change everything, the doctor replied. But Captain, you need to understand the risks. You would be challenging laws that have existed for thousands of years. The main view screen flickered as the Caliph commander forced another connection. Human Captain, your time has expired. We are prepared to board your vessel and retrieve our property by force. Jake stepped forward, feeling the weight of the decision on his shoulders. Behind him, he could sense Carlos and Linda waiting to see what he would do. Zara stood quietly, her skin still showing those strange new patterns. Commander Jake said to the screen, "I need to inform you that the person you're calling property has requested human protection. Under Earth law, I am granting that protection." The Caliph commander's multiple eyes seemed to focus more intently. "Earth law has no authority in galactic space. You will surrender the property or face destruction." "Actually," Linda said, checking her legal database, "human vessels are considered sovereign territory under the Colonial Protection Act. Earth law applies here." The commander's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You dare challenge the Galactic Council's authority?" "I'm not challenging anyone's authority," Jake replied. "I'm protecting someone who asked for help. Through the side viewports." Jake could see more ships arriving at the edge of the system. Word was spreading fast about the confrontation. Some of the new arrivals looked like news vessels. Others appeared to be military ships from various species. "Zara," Jake said, without turning away from the screen, "you heard what Dr. Wong said? If you accept human protection, there's no going back. You'll never be considered property again, but you'll also never be able to return to Villani space. Do you understand?" Zara's skin shifted through several color patterns before settling on the gold and silver mixture. "This one understands. This one chooses freedom." The words seemed to hit the Caliph commander like a physical blow. "The property cannot make choices. Property does not have the right to speak of freedom." "She's not property," Jake said firmly. "She's a person, and persons have rights." Carlos moved to stand beside Jake. "Captain's right. We won't hand over anyone who doesn't want to go." Linda joined them as well. The Aurora's dream stands behind Captain Morrison's decision. Jake felt a surge of gratitude toward his crew. They were willing to face 3 warships rather than participate in what they saw as slavery. The Caliph commander seemed to realize that threats weren't working. "Human fools, you do not understand what you are doing. Without proper hierarchy, society collapses into chaos. The servant classes exist because they cannot govern themselves." "Says who?" Jake asked, echoing his earlier question to Zara. "Says natural law. Says thousands of years of civilization." Dr. Wong's voice came from the communication channel. "Commander, with respect, humans once believed the same thing. We were wrong. Civilization doesn't require hierarchy. It requires cooperation." The Caliph commander's image flickered, as if the connection was being interfered with. When it stabilized, Jake could see other aliens on the bridge behind the commander. They appeared to be arguing among themselves. Captain Morrison came a new voice through the speakers. This one was different, smoother, more diplomatic. "This is Ambassador Krell of the Altarian Federation. We have been monitoring this situation with great interest." A new image appeared on screen beside the Caliph commander. The Altarian was tall and blue-skinned, with 4 arms and large, intelligent eyes. Ambassador Jake said carefully, "I wasn't aware the Federation was involved in this." "We are not involved. But we are, curious. Your species has a reputation for unusual approaches to social problems. We wish to observe how you handle this situation." Jake realized that this had become more than just a rescue mission. Representatives from multiple species were watching to see what humans would do when faced with galactic law that conflicted with their values. "The law is clear," the Caliph commander insisted. "Property must be returned to its owners." "But what if the law is wrong?" Jake asked. The question seemed to ripple through all the watching ships. Jake could see communication lights flashing as the various species discussed what they had just heard. "Ambassador." Krell leaned forward in his image. "Captain Morrison, are you suggesting that laws accepted by the majority of galactic civilization are incorrect?" Jake looked back at Zara, who was watching the conversation with fascination. Her skin patterns had stabilized into steady gold and silver swirls. For the first time since he had met her, she looked like someone who believed she had a future. "I'm saying that laws that treat people like property are wrong. No matter how many species accept them," Jake said. "And I'm saying that every sentient being has the right to choose their own path in life." The communication channels exploded with chatter as representatives from dozens of species began arguing among themselves. Jake could hear fragments of the debates. Through the translation system. Dangerous human. Idealism ... perhaps worth considering ... would. Destroy social order ... But what if they're right? Khalith Commander cut through the noise. Enough. We will board the human vessel and take what is ours. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who defy proper order. The 3 Caliph warships began moving toward the Aurora's Dream. Jake felt his stomach tighten as he realized they were actually going to fight. Captain, Carlos said quietly, our weapon systems are powered up, but we can't win this fight. I know, Jake replied. But sometimes you have to stand up for what's right, even when you can't win. Zara suddenly stepped forward. Her skin was blazing with gold and silver patterns that seemed to pulse with inner light. Wait, she said, her voice stronger than Jake had ever heard it. She looked directly at the Caliph commander on the screen. This one was born Zara of House Velen. This one was raised to believe that servants exist to serve and masters exist to rule. This one accepted that hierarchy was natural law. The commander's mandibles clicked impatiently. Yes, property understands its place. Now return to your owners. No, Zara said, and the words seemed to echo through the bridge. This one has learned something new. This one has learned that natural law can be wrong. This one has learned that persons can choose to change. She turned to face the view screen showing all the watching ships. This one chooses to stand with the humans. This one chooses freedom over safety, choice over certainty, hope over despair. Her skin began showing patterns Jake had never seen before, complex swirls of every color, moving and changing like a living aurora. It was beautiful and somehow defiant at the same time. This one will never kneel again, Zara declared. The effect on the watching aliens was immediate. Jake could see excited discussions breaking out on every ship. The Altarian ambassador was conferring rapidly with his staff. Even the Caliph commander seemed momentarily stunned. Then space around them began lighting up with incoming hyperspace signatures. Jake counted at least 20 new ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The tactical display became crowded with new contacts. This is Admiral Kate Barnes. Of the Human Colonial Defense Force came a crisp voice over all communication channels. We've been monitoring this situation. Any hostile action against the Aurora's Dream will be considered an act of war against humanity. Jake felt his knees go weak with relief. The cavalry had arrived. It was flying human flags. The Caliph commander stared at the screen showing the newly arrived human fleet. When he spoke again, his voice was filled with disbelief. You would risk war over one worthless servant. Admiral Barnes's image appeared on the main screen. She was a stern-looking woman in her 50s, wearing a crisp military uniform. Commander, we would risk war to defend the principle that no sentient being is worthless, and that freedom is not something to be bought and sold. The Admiral's eyes found Jake on the bridge. Captain Morrison, you and your crew have acted with honor. The person under your protection will remain under human jurisdiction. Jake felt something shift in his chest, a mixture of pride and relief, and the knowledge that everything had just changed. Not just for Zara, but for every species in the galaxy. Thank you, Admiral, Jake said. Zara moved to stand beside him, her skin still showing those impossible aurora patterns. When she spoke, her voice carried to every ship in the system. This one thanks the humans for showing that chains can be broken. This one will remember this day always. The galaxy would remember it too, Jake realized. The day humanity declared that freedom was worth fighting for, no matter who was asking for it. 6 months after the confrontation at Kepler Station, Jake stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station and watched ships coming and going through the busy space lanes. The station had grown dramatically since word spread about what humans were calling the Morrison Doctrine. Every day brought more aliens seeking what they called human protection. Captain Morrison? A familiar voice said behind him. Jake turned and smiled. Zara approached him with confident steps, no longer keeping the careful distance she once maintained. Her crystal skin showed steady patterns of gold and silver that had become her normal coloring. She wore a crisp uniform with the insignia of a certified galactic translator and cultural consultant. "Just Jake," he reminded her, as he had been doing for months. "How did the session with Dr. Wong go?" "Very well," Zara replied, settling beside him at the observation window. "The new arrivals are adapting faster than expected. Having someone who understands their conditioning seems to help." Jake nodded. 3 more ships had arrived this week carrying aliens who had heard about the human sanctuary and wanted to escape various forms of servitude. Zara had become instrumental in helping them adjust to the concept of personal freedom. "The Corvin mining slaves are the most challenging," Zara continued. "Their species has practiced debt bondage for so long that they cannot imagine life without owing someone their labor. But they're making progress?" "Yes. Yesterday, one of them chose his own name instead of using his property designation. It was a small thing, but Dr. Wong says these small choices build into larger ones." Through the window, Jake could see a familiar ship approaching the docking bay. The Aurora's Dream looked small compared to some of the massive vessels sharing the space lanes. But she had become famous throughout this sector of the galaxy. "Carlos finished the repairs?" Zara asked, following his gaze. "This morning. Linda's already filed our flight plan for the next run." Jake's cargo business had changed completely over the past months. Instead of carrying trade goods between alien worlds, the Aurora's Dream now transported refugees to human space and carried supplies to the growing network of sanctuary stations. "Where are we going this time?" Zara asked. Jake noticed how naturally she said "we." In the early days, she would never have assumed inclusion in future plans. Now she was a full partner in his ventures, bringing her knowledge of alien cultures and languages to help identify beings who needed rescue. "Reports of forced labor on the mining stations near Vega 7, Jake said. "Apparently some Altarian companies are using indentured Falcon workers in conditions that violate even their own labor laws." Zara's skin shifted too. "Include some orange patterns, colors." Jake had learned to indicate a determination mixed with anger. "The Falcons are amphibious. If they're being used in dry mining operations, that constitutes physical torture by their species standards, which is why we need to get there quickly." Jake agreed. They walked together through the station corridors toward the docking bay. New Geneva had become the unofficial capital of what news services were calling the Human Liberation Movement. The station buzzed with activity as humans and free aliens worked together on rescue missions, refugee assistance, and legal challenges to traditional slavery laws. As they passed the communication center, Jake could hear news broadcasts from across the galaxy. The Morrison Doctrine had created shock waves that were still spreading months later. In other news, the Villani homeworld continues to experience civil unrest as servant-class populations demand representation in government, one broadcaster reported. Colonial authorities report that productivity has declined as workers refuse to accept traditional labor assignments without compensation. Zara paused to listen, her skin showing complex patterns of emotion. "My people are changing," she said quietly. "How does that make you feel?" Jake asked, proud and sad and hopeful. She looked at him with her mirror-bright eyes. "It is difficult to watch from far away, but I know I can never return. I made my choice." Jake put a hand on her shoulder in the casual gesture of friendship that had taken months for her to accept. "You're not watching from far away. You're helping lead the change." It was true. Zara's story had spread through underground networks across Villani space. The sight of a former noble choosing freedom over safety had inspired others to question their society's rigid hierarchies. Her recorded speeches were smuggled from world to world. Carrying the message that change was possible, they reached the Aurora's Dream to find Carlos and Linda loading supplies for the next mission. Both had become celebrities in their own right, the crew who stood by their captain when he defied the galaxy's most powerful interests. Jake. "Perfect timing," Linda called from the cargo bay. "We just received a priority message from Admiral Barnes. She wants to speak with you before we leave." Jake made his way to the ship's communication center, where the Admiral's image soon appeared on screen. Kate Barnes had become the public face of humanity's new role in galactic affairs. But Jake could see the stress of that responsibility. In the lines around her eyes, Captain Morrison, the Admiral said with a slight smile, "I have news I thought you'd want to hear directly. Good news, I hope?" "Very good. The Galactic Council voted this morning to begin formal review of all servitude laws. It's not immediate change. It's the first time in recorded history that they've agreed to examine the legal basis for slavery." Jake felt a surge of satisfaction. What changed their minds? Economics, mostly. 12 major species have reported significant disruptions to their labor systems. Free workers are more productive than forced ones, and word is spreading. The Council realizes they need to adapt or face complete social breakdown. Admiral Barnes leaned forward in her image. But that's not the only news. We've received formal requests from 47 different species asking for human assistance in transitioning to voluntary labor systems. Jake, we're not just rescuing individuals anymore. We're helping to redesign entire civilizations. The weight of that responsibility settled on Jake's shoulders. What had started as one man's refusal to abandon someone in need had grown into a galactic movement. "There's more," the Admiral continued. "The Altarian Federation has announced they're adopting human-style labor laws for all their colonies. They're calling it the Morrison Standard for worker protection." Jake felt his face grow warm with embarrassment. "They didn't need to name it after me." "Yes, they did," Zara said from behind him. "Names have power. The Morrison Standard tells the galaxy that humans will not accept the oppression of any sentient being." Admiral Barnes nodded. "Zara's right. And speaking of names, I have one more piece of news. The Villani government has announced that Zara Freeman there, using her chosen human surname, has been formally pardoned for all crimes and offered full restoration of citizenship." Zara stepped into view of the camera, her skin showing calm gold patterns. "Please thank the Villani government for their offer, Admiral. But this one, I respectfully decline. I am no longer Villani property or Villani nobility. I am a free person who chooses where to belong. I'll pass along your response," Admiral Barnes said, with obvious approval. "Captain, your next mission has been approved. Rescue those Falcon miners and bring them to safety. The galaxy is watching what we do next." The communication ended, leaving the bridge quiet except for the hum of the ship's systems. Carlos and Linda had joined them during the call, and all four stood looking at each other with the understanding that their small crew had become part of something much larger. "So," Carlos said finally, "ready to go rescue some more slaves?" "They're not slaves once we find them," Jake corrected. "They're people who just need someone to remind them they have choices." Zara moved to her station at the navigation console, her skin showing the confident patterns that had become her trademark. "Course laid in, Captain. The Falcon miners are waiting." Jake settled into his command chair and looked around at his crew, his friends, his family. Carlos at engineering, ready to keep them flying. Linda at communications, ready to carry their message across the stars. And Zara at navigation, leading them toward people who needed to learn what she had discovered months ago. That freedom was not something to be given by others, but something to be claimed by those brave enough to reach for it. "Take us out," Jake said. The Aurora's Dream pulled away from New Geneva Station and jumped to hyperspace, carrying its crew toward their next mission. Behind them, the galaxy continued to change, one rescued person at a time, and in the cargo hold. Supplies waited to be delivered, food, medicine, and most importantly, proof that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, people still believed that every sentient being deserved the chance to choose their own path among the stars.